At the end of the day, as a very small startup, your goal is actually not to go and boil the ocean. Your goal is not to promise everything to everyone. Your goal is to find the narrowest MVP, right? Like the minimum viable product that will appeal for a systematically well-defined category of customers.
Before we dive into the show, I want to share a bit about Altitude. Altitude is a global business account built on stablecoins, but fully connected to traditional fiat workflows. You get local banking details, international transfers, corporate cards, and free on and off ramps. For CFOs, stablecoins made payments faster, but slowed down everything else. Altitude changes this with invoicing, bill pay, 5% APY, and accounting integrations, all tied to your stablecoin treasury. I first met the team behind Altitude in 2021, and they were working on their first product, Squads Multisig. Fast forward to today, and Squads has become the default multisig on Solana, securing over $15 billion of value for over 450 teams. The team has brought the same level of rigor and thoughtfulness to Altitude, and I encourage all listeners to check it out. You can learn more in our show description below. Michael, really appreciate you coming in and taking the time today to chat about Fireblocks.
Of course, thanks, Eric, for having me.
There's a lot to catch up on the state of Fireblocks and what you guys are up to, but really the goal for today is to talk about the journey and how Fireblocks came to be. And to do that, I want to take a step back to all the way and talk a bit about your childhood and your upbringing. So yeah, what was that like growing up in Israel?
I was born in USSR.
Okay.
And we moved to Israel when I was 6 years old. I think, the unique thing is that as we moved, my stepdad, he actually taught me how to program. So that was a pretty important part of my childhood. And, we've been, I think a lot of what led me to all the entrepreneurial activities was the fact that in the 90s and early 2000, I think there was a huge amount of magic of what you could do with software and just having access to computer and know how to master all that. The World Wide Web and the internet was just becoming a thing, and me and my some of my best friends, we were thinking about all kind of creative businesses that we were setting up online.
This is as a kid?
As a kid, yeah. Well, when I was 14. Well, so I think the first thing that I've done when I was 13 or 14 years old, we actually created the unofficial website for the biggest Israeli boy band. And we basically put a lot of ads over there that people had to click. So we would...
get some money?
Yeah, we'll get some money. And maybe the funniest project that we had was that my best friend, he went for a student exchange program to Germany. And he saw when we were at 8th or 9th grade. So he noticed that in Germany, they really liked nargilas or hookahs, basically those oriental smoking devices that you could have bought in Israel in the market for, let's say 80 shekels. And in Germany, they were basically selling them for 80 euros. So there was a nice arbitrage between them. So we set up this website that was called GoTo. It was like a free domain. So it was GoTo tilde Nargila, the source for all your Oriental goods. We took a bus to the local market. We took photos of all the stuff that they were selling over there, all those nargilas and tobacco and all that. And we set up an online website that we were selling this worldwide. It was semi-successful because we got shut down after a few weeks, but that's the kind of stuff that we did as kids.
Who shut you down? Was it
It's a funny story that maybe kind of brings us back to a bit of the stablecoins today, but we use some kind of free credit card processor, or not free, but basically a credit card processor to process those orders, and went to the market. We took photos of everything that they were selling over there. So clearly you had the nargilas, but you also had the tobacco that you used to smoke the nargilas. And we also listed the tobaccos. So the first few orders, they come in and the people only ordered the smoking device that we shipped. Then after a few orders, someone came in and also ordered the tobacco. And apparently that selling tobacco, according to the terms of service of that payment service provider, that PSP, was illegal. So they basically shut us down.
Payment processors, that's they're very heavy compliance checks for some of these folks. So yeah, that makes sense. But no, super interesting story from your childhood. And I guess the beginning of a long journey in entrepreneurship. What
happened then was that, not many folks know, but you kind of need to go through screening before you go and you do your mandatory service. And that's where I got lucky, and I was kind of selected to be in one of those elite technology units that really sets you apart in terms of what, your understanding of cybersecurity and all that domain. Also extremely entrepreneurial. I think a lot of the people that come, or actually say like about 60% of the global cybersecurity venture market, not venture, basically market cap is folks that came from that unit.
We'd love to talk a bit more about the unit, but in terms of like the screening and the application process, like obviously maybe technical aptitude and ability was part of it, maybe just like mentality as well, but like how did you get in and sort of what were they screening for at the time?
So at the time, now those units are kind of more famous and everybody wants to get in, right? Because it does pave...
It's a reputation.
It's like a reputation. It does pave your career, and those units are kind of very well known internationally. But at the early 2000s, when, I finished my high school in 2001, no one knew anything about that. It was all extremely secretive, and it was just a set of random tests that you had to go to different locations and they will screen you, and you had no idea what you're actually getting filtered into. And it's true that a lot of this was technical, some of it is psychological, but they truly were looking for high technical skills. I think intuition around cybersecurity. I think that still cybersecurity is an area where you can learn it, but there is also just like a lot of intuition around thinking a bit like, adversarial thinking that really is really helpful. So like a very linear thinking, let's put it this way.
Got it. Makes sense. So you screen well, you join this unit, Unit 8200 for listeners, and like you're there for a few years. And talk to me about like what that was like this is like you're coming in like 18, 19, super young. This is your first like real job. What was it like?
Well, it's already a job. You're being paid like $100 per month, but yeah, you could call it a job. Yeah. It is a very unique situation. So for those who are not familiar, Unit 8200 and some of those comparable units, they are essentially what the American NSA is doing. And for those who've seen movies about the NSA, right, it's usually high-skilled professionals. Over there, they kind of throw all those problems on very ambitious 18 years old. That I think the main advantage over there is that you don't know what's possible and what's impossible. So when you're being asked to do things that are on the face of it impossible, you would still try to go and accomplish them. Remember vividly one of the most interesting occasions that I had there. We were working on some, in a very stressful situation. To be fair, there was like some, life at stake, in that specific situation. And one of my commanders told me, well, go and figure it out. And I told him, I don't think it's possible. And he told me, you're not here to tell me that something is impossible. Go and figure it out. And we went and we figured it out. That's really, I think, what's unique about those units is that you kind of young, ambitious, you have, and also in some ways a bit stupid about the actual limitations that things have. And the biggest advantage is that you are surrounded with probably the most talented people that you would ever meet in your life, and the smartest people that you would meet in your life. And just the fact that all those people are being pulled together and working on those mission critical problems, I think that that's really what sets it apart and kind of drives the performance of it. Otherwise, I don't think that any of it can be, you can't even imagine why something like this will work.
No, totally. And obviously now in 2026, Unit 8200 has become known for in tech, at least, as you said, just like a ton of cybersecurity has come out of it. When you were there, was that something, this was pretty early. I don't know if Checkpoint was even a thing yet, maybe for a little bit, but like, was there some thinking at the time, like in the early 2000s, of Unit 8200 as a hub for tech and cybersecurity?
So when you were in the inside, yes. From the outside, no. I mean, even interestingly enough, the founders of Checkpoint and Palo Alto, they are also ex-8200, but they never talked about it in public.
Yeah.
Only when you got into the unit, you kind of realize, because they would come in and they would actually do some, presentations on tech in general, and they will invite them as guest speakers to talk a bit about how do you build technology companies. But it was like very inspiring, right? That you, as an 18, 19-year-old, someone like Gil Schwade or some of those folks are coming in and they talk with you about how they build. And by the way, at that point in time, Checkpoint was either the biggest or the second biggest Israeli publicly listed company, not even a cybersecurity company. It was very inspirational to basically see how far you can get.
In terms of the like mentorship opportunities and like the people you're surrounded by, like it kind of feels like a fast growing startup almost, where you're just, again, people are like, when you start your career, the most important thing is just to be surrounded by ambitious, passionate people where you can like learn from, you can build a network, and sounds like this was one of the nice byproducts. That
byproduct actually accelerated heavily after I've started my first startup. So there is a thing that is now kind of goes, I think people take for granted that this has always been a launchpad for startups. But it's not exactly the case. I mean, I think that the reality was that throughout the first decade of this century, basically from 2000 to 2010, cybersecurity was not a hot space. It wasn't actually a really big area of investment. Of course, you had some very successful companies like Checkpoint and Juniper and Fortinet and McAfee and all those, but it was not even sexy because it wasn't called cybersecurity. It was called IT security or infosec, things that
someone rebranded it.
Yeah, I mean, just hearing those names, you think about some folks that are like in the back of the office, working on some firewall configuration. So it wasn't considered to be sexy. Actually a lot of the talent that came out from the unit back then was not even working on cybersecurity problems. They came up with extremely amazing other startups. For example, people that been with me on the same team, they came up with a company called PrimeSense, that this was Kinect, the first sort of sensor that was in Xbox that was detecting your movements.
Oh, okay.
And later on, it was acquired by Apple, and that's actually part of your Face ID today. So there was a lot of kind of deep tech, but completely other domains that people were focusing on. And only in 2012, 2013, cybersecurity became a very sexy and hot topic with a lot of investment that was funneling into this space. And I think that's actually where the real network, the real mentorship, all those things started to become more established.
Was there a pivotal moment in terms of the industry that accelerated this in like 2012?
Yeah, I mean, the most pivotal moment, at least, from my perspective, was that I think in 2012 or 2013, there were a few big hacks that were revealed in the United States, where a lot of the bigger companies like Lockheed Martin, RSA, Microsoft, all those companies were compromised by what was believed as a fairly widespread foreign, mostly like Chinese related hacking campaign, what was called APT1. And Mandiant, that now is part of Google, they came out with this huge report about how all the American companies got infiltrated. And that was the moment that I think the industry, or at least from my perspective, the industry moved from just calling it InfoSec to cybersecurity.
You needed both. You need the rebranding and the sort of market catalyst. Okay, so you eventually start your own company called Laccoon in 2011. What was that like as your first company? Sort of, did you like what was your mindset going in?
It was my first successful company. Before that, I had another two unsuccessful startup. That the first one was actually focused where I was the VP R&D. The first one was related to social fashion, which is kind of weird. And the second one was related to distributed storage, something that is very similar to
Filecoin. Like Filecoin?
Yeah, very similar to Filecoin, but way before distributed ledger existed. Nevertheless, Laccoon was focused on mobile security, so securing mobile devices from getting hacked, specifically for enterprise clients. And that was essentially on the back of the fact that, in 2012 or 2011, people started to buy iPhones and Android devices. They would come to work and they would ask their employer and the IT to connect it to email. So there were a lot of concerns. I think we approached it with a lot of optimism. It was clear to us that this is a problem that is worth solving. It also felt like a problem that we have a very unique understanding of the problem space and the solution space. We were able to secure funding from really the leading group of angel investors. The seed round, the guy, Shlomo Kramer was the founder of Checkpoint and the first check in Palo Alto network. So that was he, and Mickey and Rakesh, who was Transmit nowadays, but they sold the previous company, Trusteer, to IBM for $1 billion. They put the seed round. And this is actually where I really got my first mentorship, right? I think spending time with Mickey, who's still, in my opinion, absolutely the best product person I've ever seen in action. And Rakesh, who, in my opinion, absolutely the best go-to-market president that I've seen in action. This is where I think the mentorship really kicked in.
Why do you think they were willing to help you?
I remember that we went pitching and we went to all the VCs and we were pitching the VCs and the VCs were trying to make their mind. And then initially I asked a friend of someone who I knew to forward our pitch to Shlomo. He didn't respond. And interestingly enough, and this is probably a good advice to any entrepreneur, you need to be persistent. So somehow I found that there is a different angle through one of my best friends who knew someone who worked for Shlomo. So I forwarded that pitch again. Then Shlomo calls me. We had like 30 minutes conversation. He was in California over the phone. And then he tells me, okay, I want you to go tomorrow and meet Mickey. So I go and meet Mickey. And then a day later, we basically getting a term sheet. On literally like 30 minutes conversation with Shlomo and maybe like an hour conversation with Mickey. And the interesting thing is that they were not really focused on our solution or what we thought will be our first solution there. I think they were focused on us being individuals that were subject matter expert in that specific domain. I think they also probably appreciated that, we had credentials of people that will work their ass on and I think there was like something about us that they understood that we have a chip on our shoulder, that we're really going to work hard, and we're going to be humble and nimble, and we'll figure it out. That was probably kind of the combination of those two things. Was probably what drove them to put the first check.
Got it. Okay, so you end up raising a successful round. You end up selling to Checkpoint, and you worked there for a few years. Let's fast forward to 2017. You've been at Checkpoint for a few years, and you see these crypto hacks, and you see like just a bunch of stuff going on. Talk to me, like, what was your mindset then?
I was interested a bit in blockchain, but definitely I had no crypto. There's a funny story. I tried to buy crypto back in 2012 on Mt. Gox, and I didn't pass the KYC. A good thing or a bad thing in the retro.
I'm surprised they had KYC in the first place.
Yeah, they had something. I had no crypto, but we got involved in investigating a small part of the investigation, the hacks that happened in South Korea, where Lazarus hacked those 4 exchanges, and they stole about $200 million worth of Bitcoin. I was advising one of the VCs that were focused on cybersecurity. So I go to the next meeting with them. We would just spend an hour a week, that they would ask me my opinion about different ideas. So I go there and like, wow, you don't believe what I just saw. Someone just, it was like $200 million was wiped out in a single moment, from those exchanges. I think that there is something there. We should find a company to invest in. So we go in, I go into this meeting. All the 2 GPs over there, they start arguing with me that this is nonsense, that this is only used by criminals. Why are we talking about it? The other guy, the CTO, who's a good friend of mine till this day, he actually thought that it's interesting. So we convinced them to organize calls with companies. We didn't know anyone, right, in this space. So the first call or the second call was with the CEO of Kraken, and then we had a call with Genesis. That this is how I met Carl, and we talked with quite a few of those folks until we understood that there is actually a pretty big issue that needs to be solved.
And this was, and you, like, when you were having these calls, you already had this idea of, hey, maybe there's something for us to build here. If people are having these issues, if there's these hacks, maybe other folks have the same worries.
So initially, actually, we were doing those calls just to understand if it's investable. So we thought that we will invest in a company, or they would thought that they will invest in a company that will solve this problem. But as we were going through those calls, we started to understand the landscape. You had Ledger Nanos, and you had Zappo, and you had BitGo and Coinbase, but like it was all of those cold storage clunky solutions that existed. And as you went deeper, you understood that people actually had an issue with moving the asset and the transactional aspect of crypto. Keep in mind, it was like 2017 or 2018, so there was already the ICO boom. And then we understand, okay, they have solution for the stationary stuff, for the long-term custody, but actually the most interesting narrative about it, of making it the internet of money, so to speak, is not solved. And I think that it kind of matched a lot of the things that we worked on, or the technologies like trusted execution and so on, that we were familiar with from doing a lot of the innovative work on the mobile security side. So it sort of all came together, to be honest, in this kind of magical moment.
And you guys ended up using MPC for the product. Is that something you decided early on, like, hey, this is our expertise and we're going to use it? Or was it more sort of emergent, where you realized MPC was the right product, was the right technology for the product that you're trying to build?
Yeah, the latter. So I think that was actually fundamental to the initial idea. And for those who will look at in our first patent, they will see a strong emphasis on trusted execution. Basically, what you have with AWS Nitro and SGX, that now a lot of companies are doing it, but clearly Fireblocks developed the most amount of expertise in that domain. And we kind of tracking that domain to the origin of the origin of the origin. My co-founder, Pavel, was working on the father of the grandfather of this tech with Intel. So that was actually the technology that we were really familiar with. Initially, the first product, funny enough, was not built on MPC. It was built on multisig. So we rolled out a multi-sig solution. Well, actually, the Bitcoin implementation was multi-sig, and the Ethereum implementation was MPC. And I had a big argument with with Pavel, my co-founder. I told him, like, this MPC, it looks like very complex. There is no way that we will figure it out. Maybe we should license it. And he was like, no. We have to own it. We need to understand it. We will make it work. He was actually very bullish that we will be able to make it work. Before that, there were essentially two companies that there was a theoretical article, and Unbound, which eventually got acquired by Coinbase, were really the pioneers, but they had some specific implementation that was not based on this article. And then when we started, there was another company, Curve, that got acquired by PayPal, that it was rumored that they're implementing it, but they were not launched yet. So it was sort of unproven that you can actually make MPC work for it. And that's why we started with both multisig and MPC implementation. It just happened that very quickly after we've implemented the initial solution for Galaxy, we saw that this multisig thing doesn't really scale. So we pivoted and put everything on MPC.
Got it. And were you guys already sort of experts in MPC? Is it something you had to maybe develop? Did you have to bring in outside help? What was the...
We actually hired a few cryptographers that did their master's and PhD on very early on. They were actually part of the founding team, more or less. They were part of the first 5 engineers, Udi and Nikos. They both joined us very, very early. And also Kosti, who's been our first employee. He's been deeply and good. I mean, all the folks that were there at the beginning actually kind of dove into this thing initially, and we did bring some serious firepower very early on. Also, Professor Ron Canetti, who came on our advisory board. So this is actually how it wasn't. To be fair, our personal know-how of the 3 co-founders, and I remember that I was in some meeting with a big financial institution that. The feedback from the guy who looked at our solution back in early 2018 was like, those guys talk about MPC, but there's no one there that understands in cryptography. That was basically his feedback. I was like, sure, but we have all those guys that just joined us that they do understand in this domain. So I think I wouldn't say that we came with it from home, but we were very, very quick to
try to productize it.
Yeah, to productize it. And then eventually, within almost 2 years, to be the leaders in creating all the breakthroughs around how this technology evolved over the years.
Got it. So among the founding team, those are pretty early. Those are very early hires for cryptographers. I feel like that's not something you typically see with startups.
Yeah, but we had to do that.
Had to, yeah. Fair enough. Okay, so you have this, you're talking to all these exchanges, you realize they have this issue, and what did the next year look like? When you actually decide how did you realize, hey, there's actually an opportunity here to start a business?
Yeah, look, I think that it actually goes back to the first startup or the second startup that failed, that Filecoin startup, and why Lacuna, I think, was more successful. When we were trying to do that Filecoin startup, not to get too much details, there was a point in time that I was like, shit, we are basically having all those conversations, and we started to develop the product, but it seems to be that no one is interested in that. And then I called a friend of mine who served with me in the same service. He served with me that he had a different startup in the e-commerce analytics, and I was miserable and crying and telling them that we're working on something and no one wants it. And then he told me, did you read all the books? I'm like, what books? And he's like, well, there's all these books about startups that you need to read. I'm like, okay, send me the list. And there was a long list of books about startups that the first thing that I would say, and if you're an entrepreneur and you're listening to this podcast, first and foremost, read the books. It's actually, I made the mistake. but it's unreasonable that people will continue to do the same mistake of trying to attempt something when there is a pretty well-established literature on the topic. My most favorite book, and that's the book that I gave to all of my set of employees on the go-to-market side in Fireblocks. I force any company, any founders that I invest in to read. It's called The 4 Steps to Epiphany. It's a book from the end of the 90s, I think, or maybe 2003, by Steve Blank. I think I need to get royalties by the amount of people that I recommend this book to. But it's a very structured book that basically explains what are all the preliminary components in terms of market validation and product validation that you need to have before you embark on investing in building a product. And especially, I would say, and it actually the amazing thing about this book is that it's very systematic. It's like almost a guide of how you approach it. A disclaimer, I think the first time that you read it and the first time that you try to implement it, not everything kind of works one-to-one into the theory. But as more you practice, it actually gets more aligned with the theory. So I have used it in my first startup. And then when we did Fireblocks, some of the guidance over there in terms of what are the questions that you're asking customers, what is the feedback that you're getting, how do you quickly validate that people would actually be willing to pay for your product, and how they articulate the pain and the methodology to understand what's the ROI for them to invest, they were all validated in those first set of meetings, right? So it was clear that what we were facing here was at least like the problem set and the solution that we envisioned in the beginning. It was maybe for a very niche market, but it was the most pure way to align to what was written in that book. And that gave me the confidence to basically double down on it. Although I think the scary thing at the beginning was that it looked like a very small and niche market.
With mostly crypto exchanges and crypto institutions, which at the time, there weren't nowhere near as many as we have today.
Yeah. I mean, initially we were even approaching only the active traders, that it was a very small set of players. And I vividly remember that I was calling on some of the people that are actually our clients today, and we were telling them, like, this is the problem that we would solve. And they were like, this is irrelevant. We have our Ledger Nanos.
Okay. Okay. So you start the company, and like, what did that look like in terms of like getting to a product that you guys felt like actually worked and had real demand? Obviously you had to like bring on some cryptography experts, but what was like the initial set of customers that you were really trying to go after?
Yeah, so I mean, I think that the again, kind of summarizing that book, right? But the idea over there, and I think that that's also the idea that is not fully well understood, or at least this is my approach. So it's not always very well understood by entrepreneurs that are embarking on this journey. At the end of the day, as a very small startup, your goal is actually not to go and boil the ocean. Your goal is not to promise everything to everyone. Your goal is to find the narrowest MVP, right? Like the minimum viable product that will appeal for a systematically well-defined category of customers, that they all have basically the same exact pain. And early on, the pain that we understood that exists was for all the, let's call it active traders or active institutions, right, in the space, that they had a situation that they had to move money across multiple exchanges, that they had to settle actively, do dozens of transactions per day at the minimum across all those exchanges. And they had that pain. And inherently, that was really the group of market makers, active traders, prop trading firms, hedge funds, and so on, that they have had those strategies. We were not even talking about exchanges at that point on, right? So we took us about 9 months to build the product. I think that what we were doing over there was not extremely unique. We were just basically thinking about requirements, going to the prospects, showing them the requirements, making sure that they are able to articulate their pain point, how much they're willing to pay for it, et cetera, et cetera. As we were getting, I think it was, we were approaching January, so the product...
Of 2019, yeah.
Yeah, the product was, we had basically our beta. We went and we installed it for our first client. Funny enough, I mean, this was also like a very scary moment. So when we started the developing, we had about 10 design partners in mid-2018 that each one of them told us that they will pay us nerf to $100,000 for the solution. By the time that we finished the product, I called them. 6 out of the 10 were out of business. Yeah, so that was a wild moment. That I remember going to one of my investors and telling them, Gilly was our seed investor, sitting in his house. I was like, Gilly, I think I need to give you back the money. There's no market here. He's like, Michael, relax. Keep going. It will be okay. So as we say, like it's darkest before dawn. That was the moment there. But luckily for us, those initial set of clients, whether this is Genesis and Galaxy and GSR and Blockfields that were our first set of clients, when the market turned at the end of 2019 and starting 2020, they were, we actually launched out of stealth in June 2019. So those guys, by the mass
they had so much distribution.
Yeah, they had distribution. Also, like all the smaller players got extinct. So they were at the top of the market, which actually gave us a lot of credibility to continue and go down market from there. So we were, in many cases, basically fighting downhill, which was easier than trying to go up market.
When you say fighting downhill, do you mean sort of working with like the long tail of crypto desks and traders, as well as maybe people that would use GSR, Genesis, like if my counterpart is using it, I am more inclined to use it as well.
Yeah, so clearly there you have the Fireblocks network, so there was a lot of referral momentum, still exists quite heavily, and clearly we are now compounding it also with the Fireblocks network for payments, which kind of plays the same I would say it's kind of almost the same playbook as we done there, which relates to stablecoins. But it's true that first of all, because we position ourselves fairly high in terms of the ICP or the type of the type of firms that we were servicing, that at that point in time were considered to be the most sophisticated, the most security savvy, the most operationally competent at the market. It was easier for us to go and appeal to, first of all, all the people that were comparable to them, but also to all the people that are smaller, right? And that's, I think, also another thing that there are different views, different ideas on how this approach can work. But if you're really focusing on more kind of the enterprise sales methodology, it's usually easier to capture the most high value targets at the first part of your journey. And really, I don't know, it will cost you like a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to partner with people, because they will come with very crazy requirements that are very difficult to build, and a lot of relationship building, because it's not always easy for them to partner with very small startups. But if you are able to secure their trust and actually implement for those giants, in many cases, it's easier for you to scale. To be fair, there is also the opposite approach of, developer-led or product-led, that you really go after the mass market. I mean, this is kind of the Stripe approach, but I feel that this only works in the case of Stripe, right? Or Datadog, where you have an extremely sizable market of smaller players that you can thrive on. And what you usually even see is, for example, for Datadog, is that at some point you understand that in order for you to actually build a huge company, you need to go upstream and you need to build an enterprise product and you need to build that motion.
I think that's a super interesting dynamic, like whether it's the top-down sort of enterprise-first approach of, hey, let's start with the biggest companies and make sure they're super happy versus the bottoms-up one. Like, sounds like this is a theme you've like thought about, or
it's definitely a theme that we've thought about for the longest. I think that this is what worked for us. I think there are clearly the complete opposite examples of firms that were able to establish themselves from the completely opposite direction. I think that there is also a question of what will make sense moving forward because of all the transformation that is happening right now with AI and how technical buying actually works and changing. So I'm not sure that past experience indicates what the future lies, in terms of how startups will sell and scale, but that at least how it worked for us.
And for those initial customers like Genesis, GSR, et cetera, what do you think got them over the line where they did trust you and they were willing to work with you guys? Obviously, they had issues and they had problems that they wanted solved, but how did you convince them? How did you get them to work sort of super closely with you?
I mean, first of all, you need to establish a very personal relationship and trust with the stakeholders. So the fact that we were able to connect and relate to the CISO, to the head of operations, Carl and Joe on Galaxy, and they still 7 years later, they're still close friends. And to the CISOs Uri and David Schway that was there. So we were able to establish just a personal relationship that they felt that we're going to deliver, right? That was the first element that I think people, just generally speaking, especially in crypto, a lot of people make a lot of promises and they write fairly clever white papers and articles that 3 years later there's nothing, right? And by the way, back in 2018, 2019, most of crypto looked like that, right? I think luckily today it's less the case, but it used to be much more of that case. So the fact that we came across and we established a relationship. And the second component was truly that we really solved a big pain for them. They had this thing going on, this issue. It was a perpetual issue for them that they didn't know how to solve. Specifically, Galaxy have tried to allocate their own engineering to solve it, and they were unsuccessful. With GSR, it was a similar case, and we came in and we were able to show them something that works. And then there was just an ROI impact, instantaneous ROI impact.
So you nailed down these initial partners. You guys launched in 2019, and market's doing okay by a bit better by then. But 2020 and going into 2021 is where things really heat up, right? 2020 summer is DeFi. That's when maybe a lot of institutions start touching it or even looking into it for the first time. Talk to me about what those sort of 12 to 18 month process looked like, just experiencing that sort of hypergrowth.
It was crazy. It was wild. I think that a lot of the things we've done there, I would never advise anyone to do the same thing ever again. So I think we were quite lucky to bet on DeFi very early on. It actually came through Parafy. They're still a very close partner of the firm, and they showed me Compound, I think as end of 2019. They showed me this magic protocol that you can take stablecoin, you put there, and it gives you 3-4% or whatever when it was the interest rate was close to zero or something like that. And I was like, wow, this is wild. How what is the risk here? And then I understand that actually there is very little risk because it's over collateralized. And I convinced my team we sell the product to Parafy, and we commit to building them this button that allows them to redeem from Compound in a click of a button. It was just a matter of luck that we ended up so close into the entire evolution that happened over there. And just to quote Johnson from NVIDIA, I think he has a very famous saying about that his job as the CEO is to place the team as close as possible to the tree, that when the apple falls, they're able to catch the apple. And I feel that like, this is basically what happened with DeFi, that, it's not, I mean, we actually had my co-founder Idan, who's our chief product officer, he always tell me like, no, this is nonsense. I actually had like a whole PRD of how we're going to integrate MetaMask. And it's true. Like he actually had this whole thesis of how we are integrating all the browser extensions and Wallet Connect and everything into the product and building the policies to all that. But the truth is that the only thing that we had at that point in time was this supply and redeem to compound. What happened was that we basically starting to see this whole DeFi thing picking up. A lot of our clients coming in and like, hey, we need you guys to support it. We are fairly close to the tree when the apple starts to fall. We have some PRD and plans that Ida wrote of how we're going to execute on that. And literally like within the month, we were able to ship this browser extension that was built on MetaMask. It was extremely clunky, but there
was nothing else.
There was nothing else, and we were able to validate the demand, right? Because people start using it, and they were like, "This looks great, but it has all these bugs." So we started to invest heavily into that, and kind of the market took us with it, right? Just like, was a complete hurricane. The decisions that we took over there, and that's, again, maybe some books need to be read and some books need to be read but not followed, is that it was clear at that point in time that we are in this hyper-scaling episode of our company. And the most famous book about it is a book called Blitzscaling that was written by the co-founder of LinkedIn, I believe. We were essentially following, or I was basically following the entire methodology that is laid out in that book. What I can say in the retrospect is that, to be fair, I don't think that this is the most amazing strategy, because you completely change the culture and the quality of the company, and it does take a lot of effort afterwards to go back and fix it, which we have done, right? But going from, I would say, 100 people to 350 or 400 people within a year, not something that I would advise people to do without multiple litigations of alternative options.
And was this mostly scaling like the engineering team, like go to market and sort of customer?
Yeah, we scale across the board. We scale the engineering team, we scale the customer. The biggest thing that we had to scale was the customer operations and customer support. We clearly had to scale the sales team. I think scaling the sales team actually was the thing that worked the best for us. I'll expand in a second why. But I think the areas where we scaled in a suboptimal way were customer operations and customer support and engineering. And the reason for that is twofold. Is that essentially, to do this form of scaling, maybe in some cases like engineering, it might be advised to actually hold back, and because you can't really onboard that many quality engineers and actually get them up to speed in a very short period of time. Okay, maybe today you can with, if you use Cloud Code, right? And maybe today it's no longer an issue, and maybe, again, this will be, and outdated advice that no one would care about moving forward. But, I think that over there, to change the engineering organization, you first of all need to really invest in a lot of the infrastructure before you're scaling it out. And you need to really invest in bringing managers, right? That or basically engineering managers and this kind of layer 2 and layer 3 that knows how to absorb and manage a completely different scale of an engineering effort. And I think a similar component, I think, is around customer operation and customer success and customer support, that you need to have the know-how and the operational rigor to understand how do you measure, what is the analytics, what are the processes. And effectively, we, on that part, I think where things materially change is where we actually brought in people who've run that in a completely different scale from some of the most iconic companies. And they came in and they're like, what is this? And they kind of rebuild everything from scratch. On the engineering, it was mostly kind of a meticulous investment in this layer 2. In sales, by the way, the reason why it worked was that we actually had a leadership over there that knew how to scale rapidly into the 100 million in ARR, so it was less of an issue.
So you have this like amazing period in, again, 2020 to 2021. Things are going really well. Numbers are up and to the right. Crypto as an industry is like mainstream now. You see Coinbase ads like on the Super Bowl. And then FTX happens in 22. Obviously, like affects the whole industry sort of negatively. But for you guys, especially, like some of your customers are like, they use FTX, they're counterparties. So like, how did that, obviously I'm sure that affected you guys. How did you deal with sort of the fallout over the coming months, the year?
Yeah, I mean, I think that for us, the FTX was basically when FTX happened, we were already used to those things, because when Terra Luna happened, Celsius was a big client, 3 Arrows was a client, BlockFi was a client, Voyager was a client. So by the time we got to FTX, it was kind of, sure, okay, bring it on, right? The amount of all hands that, emergency all hands that we've done as we approached FTX.
You had gotten the reps in already.
Yes,
yeah.
Exactly.
Okay.
I already had a script of what I'm going to say to the rest of the company. I think the first one that was the Terra Luna collapse was, for me personally, maybe the scariest, because it came out of sort of nowhere, right, in terms of the implications and the wipeout. And clearly, as FTX happened, it looked, already very bad. And 2023 and 2020 and the middle of 2024 were, I think, a very unique periods for Fireblocks, because on one hand they were extremely difficult from a strategy standpoint, but on the other hand, I think what we were able to prove, and this is something that not many people know about us, is that we actually were able to sustain the exact revenue that we went into 2023 by the time that we exited in 2024. And although about 50% of our clients churned, and the reason why we were able to do that is just culturally, I would say, like, the two things that, are the most important things around our culture internally is to be obsessed over our clients and refuse to lose. And I think it took us, like, there was a lot of hard work and a lot of blood and sweat that took into diversifying our business and bringing as many new clients as we through that period as we lost. And that would actually allow us to kind of, would say, keep the altitude of the company in the same ballpark. And
you touched on something there, diversifying the revenue sources. I'd love to double click on that. Obviously, early on, as if you're serving only sort of traders and OTC desks and it's all transaction based, then as volumes go up and down, like, so does your revenue. How did you think about layering on additional products and services that folks would would do? Obviously, you guys have like a ton today that we could talk about, but maybe let's start like just at the sort of what that looked like initially.
Yeah, of course. I mean, there are, generally speaking, the organic builds, right? That all the things that we expanded over the years. But I think that for me, the most interesting part is the thematic bets that you kind of looking at the industry and you're saying, okay, I might be a bit early, but if I'm right about this investment, I'm going to have an exponential outcome, right? There is actually sort of a nonlinear trade-off, right, between how much you're going to invest to what this thing can potentially be. Although, of course, like, the probability or the time horizon for this to happen can take much longer. So the first bet was actually payments, right? It's pretty wild, but like, we acquired First Digital Assets, which is kind of Goldie's company, in February 2022, with the view that payments will move into stablecoins. 3 years early, but we saw it already there, right? And we poured a lot of money, like, the order of 50 or 60 or 70 million dollars, right, into that acquisition. I don't think we anticipated FTX to happen, right? But the fact that stablecoins, or basically you will have some on-chain payment, look to me as something that is inevitable future, right? And I was willing to make that bet. I think similarly, we did the Blockfold acquisition that was in mid-2023. That was the foundation for our tokenization engine, for a similar narrative, that it was clear that the RWAs, or whatever we want to tokenize securities, basically any financial instrument will eventually be on chain, right? So look, I mean, I think other things like dynamic with the non-custodial wallets, and to a certain extent Tress, I think there was already a lot of data that we need to do it. So I think it's a combination of the two. Sometimes you can see it and take a bet early on that something is going to be very big, and you know that you want to be a player in that domain. And some things, they just start to appear in the data and in discussions with clients that, okay, this is the trend, this is proven. And Tress is an amazing example, right? I think that you kind of taking if you're a middle office player, which you can argue that what Fireblocks is, and then you're basically taking a back office, like the best back office solution in the market, and you put it on your go-to-market apparatus, you're able to scale very, very quickly to go into regions that they could only dream of in terms of servicing, and also appeal to a much bigger players like banks with that platform.
Got it. Makes sense. And from the outside, it seems like the strategy has been mostly to acquire your way into these new verticals and develop those expertise. Have you guys also sort of done in-house stuff? Like, how do you think about that?
We've done, yeah. I mean, to be fair, we actually done a lot of in-house stuff. It's probably not. It's not always getting the right.
It doesn't get the same headlines.
Yeah, it doesn't get the same headline because
yeah.
Bloomberg is not going to cover a product launch, but they were happy to cover the fact that you pour the tens or hundreds of millions of dollars on acquisition. So that's why it's not getting the same headlines. But look, even with the embedded wallets, we initially launched this capability ourselves through internal effort before we acquired Dynamic. I think that we've done like the entire automation, orchestration, things that we've done around security, like our security posture management solution. Those are all internal capabilities that we've built. We have close to 300 people in product and engineering, so it's a lot of firepower that we can do. Although I would say that a lot of this firepower is really dedicated to make sure that Fireblocks is kind of the hyperscaler for this. And what I tell people is that a lot of folks don't appreciate how difficult it is to scale to something at the order. Well, last year we processed $6 trillion of transaction volume through the platform, and we're currently running at north to, I think, 60 million transactions per month, where we take the transaction from coding to all the way to submitting to indexing. So it's not just like signing on the transaction. It's basically the end-to-end of it. And that's the combined settlement instructions of both Euroclear and Clearstream, by the way.
Oh, it's quite impressive. And what is the long-term game plan? Like, again, from the outside, it seems like you have this goal of becoming a fully verticalized crypto company that can help any institution with like middle office, back office, maybe even other stuff. But like, what is your what do you think Fireblocks looks like in 5 years' time, 10 years' time?
Yeah, I mean, I think that where we see ourselves playing out is, let's start with what's our mission or vision, right? It's like really to make sure that we are the enabling every business and every financial player, and it seems to be that more and more non-financial players, to adopt digital assets in a simple and a secure way and at scale, right? That's what we are doing. And I think that vision and mission, they can accommodate a very vast portfolio, right? Because our customers are coming to us and asking for more and more things that we can do for them. The bare minimum, right, is basically all the software and hardware and services that they need to run their operations, their transactions, to face their counterparties in a secure way, to run their back office secure way. But of course, as time goes by, I think that we've done a lot through various partnerships to help people to distribute their products through the Fireblocks network, and also augment it with licensed services. So another example of something that we actually done in-house is to launch our qualified custodian solution. We also have money transmission licenses in the US for a very select group of clients. We are helping them with on-ramping. Like, for example, for Papaya Global that is doing payroll, we are helping with on-ramping. So all those solutions are being developed in-house. So we are also quite comfortable with helping people with being a financial intermediary for them in very select set of use cases. We are mostly servicing financial intermediaries. So our goal is not to be that one necessarily ourselves, but of course, as more and more people coming on board, they see Fireblocks as their trusted infrastructure, and if there is a gap in terms of certain licensing, and we're also able to bridge that gap.
Another big sort of seminal moment in the company is obviously October 7th in 2023. Talk to me, like, what was your messaging to the team after this happened, in terms of not the events themselves, but like how you sort of deal with it as a company?
Yeah, I mean, it seems to be, this week is a continuation of that entire episode. But look, I mean, October 7th was probably personally one of the most traumatic moments for me as an adult, as a human being. And clearly we have, over 300 people in Israel that were affected. But to be fair, we also have quite a lot of people in other regions that they also have relatives and family on the other side of the conflict. I think it was very, very complex and difficult situation. And by the way, we also have a lot of clients in territories and geographies that are not necessarily on the same side as Israel in Muslim countries that are not, are fully legitimate countries. So this entire situation had many different degrees of sensitivity. And, we kind of had to manage it, I think, or to divide and conquer the situation in a way that, on one hand, it was like incredible amount of effort and support that we had to provide to our employees in Israel. Affected. They have been moved across the country. They were under continuous bombardment of missiles throughout the last couple of years, still ongoing. So the question is, but one thing that I will give to the credit of having people in Israel, which is something that is not very clear from the outside, it's unbelievable how tough and resilient the population over there. Even right now, as the war with Iran is ongoing, it's like a normal day in the office. People working, people deploying code, they're doing the Zoom calls, all the meetings are happening. So after the first few days, that there was a bit of shock, and I think that's this is where the rest of the other 300 people across the globe kind of leaned in and helped the team. It was mostly really helping them, but also focusing on the outside. How do we ensure our clients that there is a business continuity? How do we reflect to them that this is not going to impact the platform, the stability, our roadmap, all the concerns that they have and I think a lot of those concerns are coming from, empathy. But, we had to tell them forget about this. We are here to service you. And I also went in and I told the team that the most important thing is to make sure that we communicate. And I think part of all this is to show the resiliency and the fact that we are still able to continue to work and deliver, because the attempt was to destroy all of that. And the best proof is the resiliency of the country, the resiliency of the economy, and 40% of the economy is the tech sector. So I wasn't the only one, right, that was advocating for that. And then on the other end of it, it was really to diffuse a lot of the concerns and the affiliation that I think we've done well, and to ensure our global client base, including in countries that don't necessarily share the same view, that we are still the best partner for them. And I think we were able to accomplish that as well. And
you also had many employees, I'm sure, that were called up as reserves, maybe involved and had to take extended periods of time off. What was that like in terms of working with the government to make that as just easy as possible for everybody?
Yeah, I think at the peak we had something like 20-25% of our employees there that were called into the reserve. You don't deal much with the government because it is purely, it's like a bureaucratic process that they cover for it. But we had to take care of their families, right? In their absence, we had to make sure that the fact that they are absent, we are still able to deliver on the roadmap. And of course, on a more personal level, right? Those are people that you work with, and you know that they are potentially in very risky or dangerous situation. And we have quite a few crazy stories of people who were, inches from getting hurt. There's of course, you need to also manage that.
Fast forward to today, Fireblocks is massive. You guys have over 1,000 employees, hundreds, if not thousands of customers. How has your time allocation changed from a few years ago? What do you actually spend most of your time on these days?
We have about 890 employees, but yeah, getting to that. I think that my time right now is really focused on the areas that I enjoy the most. Took me a while to get me to the point where I can do it, and bringing in executives and leadership that I trust, and individual contributors that I trust to do the things that we need to do on an ongoing basis. So I enjoy basically three things. first and foremost, to spend time with our clients, and specifically our strategic clients, and understand kind of what next for them, what we need to build towards, and making sure that we are solutioning for them in the best way possible, right? And I feel that right now I can do it more than ever before. So to spend time with all of our scale clients, the biggest fintechs, the traders, and more so, the most exciting thing actually for me is that I spend a lot of my time right now with all the new payment service providers that are coming into the space. Ria Money, MoneyGram, TapTapSend, Checkout, WorldPay, Stripe, all those guys, Bridge, right? That I've been working with. Some of them are really recent. Some of them are. So those are actually like the most exciting use cases for me, because they're fundamentally, you spend time with them, and this was the vision of what we hoped that we're going to change, right? You talk with them and you basically understand how you are touching the individual in the Philippines, how you're touching the individual in Colombia, how are you touching the small importer exporter in Hong Kong, and those are the companies that I'm most excited right now to quickly iterate with. They're also very fast in terms of building the products. The other category is the banks, and the banks is the most unique challenge, to be honest, that I'm spending my time on, because finally we got to the point that I'm actually spending time with the CEOs of the banks. It's pretty wild that those discussions, from being pushed into the, okay, you can talk with my innovation lead and do something in our lab, innovation lab, to the fact that it was the first time I went to Davos this year, and it was part of their mini unicorn that they give you a badge to go into the main conference. But every 30 minutes I was meeting with the CEO or the president of one of the biggest banks here in New York. And I was able to convince most of them to take the red pill. And the red pill for them, interestingly enough, is how do you survive this? It's not how you make more money. It's not how you become more operationally more savvy. It's not how do you reduce your risk. It's really how you are going to be Netflix and not Blockbuster in this transformation. Or if you want to take something that is more kind of tech related, my most impactful years was when public cloud became a transformational power. And I was there when AWS was first adopted, and we started using AWS back in 2011. And you're asking yourself, how did Amazon became Amazon? How Microsoft actually was able to emerge as competent as Amazon in this journey, and why specifically IBM fell behind, right? And if you can go back in time to 2010, 2012, I don't think that there was that much difference between Microsoft and IBM to assume that one of them will be the $1 trillion company and will lead AI and some elements of cloud, and the other one will belong to the history of compute. So I think this is for me another exciting thing that I'm spending with all the CEO and the leadership of the banks, and sometimes they don't like my interpretation of the situation, but eventually after enough demos, they buy into it. And lastly, just spending time with our fintech and trading clients, that they come to us with more and more questions and asks. And I also spend a lot of time on AI, just internal transformation using AI. I think every CEO right now of a company our size, he has to focus on how this is going to change the entire operations of the company. So I spend a lot of my time on that.
And in terms of spending time with the big bank CEOs and other founders of other companies, in some ways it goes back to how Fireblocks get started, which is just being super close to the customer, talking to them and building something that specifically suits your needs. Like if I had to sort of pull away one theme from our conversation, that would be it. And it sounds super simple in theory. In practice, obviously harder to execute.
It is, but I think it really, for me, it's the most exciting part. And I would say that that experience that I had a few weeks ago in Davos, where I was the only person from the company that went there and the only one that was able to get and meet and was running by myself from meeting to meeting solo, it was one of the most exciting things that I've done for years, because it really brought me back to 2018, that I was running between Genesis and Galaxy and all those folks in New York, pitching them our solution, myself, and it brings us to the origin. I think that every company has its own culture. Every company has its own kind of core of what drives it. And I think that for Fireblocks, it's really that intimate relationship with our top clients or top prospects, right? Understanding where they're going, showing them that something that they didn't imagine before, that it's possible actually to do and deliver, and then to go and execute on that.
In terms of crypto security today, it seems like the industry has come a long way. Yet at the same time, we still have exploits regularly, like whether it's smart contract hacks or Bybit, I believe last year, that was a massive 9-figure one. How do you feel about the overall state of things?
I think we are definitely in a slightly better place than where we started. But unfortunately, we still see a lot of those things coming in for two reasons. One, even in the case of Bybit, you still see a lack of implementation of proper tools like Fireblocks or others within the stack. And eventually, it carries a very expensive price for not implementing it. And by the way, one of the things that we have discovered over the years is that also when you're buying tools like Fireblocks, it's also you're also required to implement them correctly. So as a good example, this is why we released our Fireblocks Security Posture Management, and we are now working on the Fireblocks Security Center, and we're working on a bunch of other security tools to help our clients to have a continuous sort of posture and configuration understanding of how their environment is configured, because people change things all the time. So, and cybersecurity, or as I always say, basically my goal is to build you the kind of thinnest body armor or vest, right, that will allow you to still run, but will protect you from bullets. And it means that it needs to be stitched properly to your fit. So we are investing still a lot in that. The other issue is that, and by the way, I think that there is also an issue right now that I'm seeing solutions in the market that they are not necessarily that they do advertise themselves as enterprise grade solutions or institutional solutions, but they were built for something else like NFTs or gaming, and not necessarily they are designed to sustain the same level of attack. And the other issue is that our adversary is becoming more and more sophisticated, right? So if you actually run the research on how big is Lazarus Group, those are thousands of people that are currently employed by North Korea, that their main source of revenue is coming from crypto hacks, and they're being supercharged by AI. And we are seeing that. So AI has basically, it's a bit of a double-edged sword on this thing. Unfortunately, I think that the hackers or the attackers have had the first mover advantage in terms of leveraging it properly. Where we are pushing right now is to make sure that we are leveraging that also on the defense side, because that's the only way to really keep up with what is happening on the other side of it. And, unfortunately, they're being heavily bankrolled by a lot of those hacks.
Right. It's like their biggest internal industry or something like that. North Korea. Michael, appreciate you taking the time today, and it was a pleasure chatting.
Yeah, thanks for having me. It's great.